Good. Just right there at the end, I decided to go to grid so I could look at you when you weren't talking. And that's something that I would really like to work with you two on today, is to make sure that you don't stop talking. You're either talking with your mouth or you're talking with your mind. Okay. And that it never, ever stops. So what the last word you say continues in your head until she says something that makes you say, that's not good, or it makes you react in another way. You understand what I mean? Is that the other person is going to change your thoughts so that you're going to say something new, go to a new tactic. It's them that changes you. Okay. And you don't want to ever stop. Let your thoughts progress. You don't just sit there and think the same thing. No, you're thinking, don't you see? And I'm going to keep on doing this because this is what's right. And then suddenly she says something and then you go, no. And then you'll eventually talk again, right? So you just want to keep those thoughts rolling. It's like a stream of consciousness. You know what stream of consciousness is, right? That it doesn't ever stop. So do you understand? Does everybody get that concept about you never stop talking? And that the talking leads, the thinking leads to the talking, and the talking leads to the thinking. Okay. It's like that. If you get that, you'll never stop being your character. Never. Because none of your thoughts will ever come into your mind, because your mind will be completely 100% occupied with your character's thoughts. Do you see how useful that is? Not only are you giving your face something to do at all times, because your thoughts are what animate your face in a real way. Your thoughts make your face do everything. Okay. If you try to do your face some way without thoughts, then it's all fake. It's all superficial. Okay. So in order for your face and your eyes to be animated always, you need to be thinking the thoughts of your character. So not only do you have that advantage, but if you're constantly thinking your character's thoughts, your thoughts have no room in your head. Okay. And therefore you can be your character all the time. And you don't even need to think, I got to walk over here or I got to walk over there, because you've already worked out why your character wants to do that. And you can have them have those thoughts. You know what? I'm not going to sit here anymore. And you get up and you walk, right? Because it's your character's thoughts that make you get out of your chair and walk. It's not the director that makes you walk. You see the difference? Okay. And that's what makes people look really dumb sometimes, beginner actors, is that they get up and they walk over because the director told them to. But that's not why people move. We don't have directors, right? It comes from your thoughts that make you say, okay, I'm not sitting here anymore. Okay. So let's start back where we were before.
And what will I be doing during that time? I'm going to experience a seminal, fun anecdote. And we're going to change our stories forever.
But we were going to watch that Ken Burns thing.
The Dust Bowl can wait, bitch. What took them 4 years, we're going to do in one night.
Good. So what did you learn anything from this? Any questions about this?
It was good to go through the scene focusing on reacting, because I think like there are a couple lines that I say that like I wasn't really thinking about responding directly to Maria's lines, but after thinking that, it makes it so much more natural, like a transition.
Have you guys watched any of the videos where I have the split screen, where you're watching both people at the same time acting? Spencer has one, and Michael and Shania have one. I have a bunch of them with two people at the same time. If you watch those, you can see what I mean by thinking the thoughts of your character between lines, because that is where it really counts. And that's when you're shooting in a movie, they're going to decide when to cut back to you. And sometimes while someone's saying a very long line, they've got the camera on the other person the whole time, because it's more interesting how they're reacting to what's being said than what's being said. Okay. And that is what, when you're doing a self-tape and you've got a reader that's off camera, what you do while the other person's talking is going to get you the job. If you don't do anything and you're standing there listening like this, no way. Because you cease to exist when you stop thinking as your character. You die. You're dead for a minute. Okay? Because either you're going to think your own thoughts or you're trying not to think anything, and then you're totally dead. So you've got to think your character's thoughts. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you understand what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we're going to tape you guys next week doing this with a double screen. So it will catch you. Doesn't it catch you, Spencer? Every once in a while. And even for 2 seconds, you go, oh man, we didn't think at those 2 seconds. And you can see it. You can see the eyes go dead. And you know for sure they will not cut to you on that shot, right? Will they? They're going straight over to the other person. Whoever is the most alive is the one the editor is going to choose. So you don't want to end up on the floor, do you? So it's really, really important to know exactly what your train of thought is. And, it doesn't, like I said, you don't need to memorize it. It should happen spontaneously as you're hearing it. Because the way the other person is saying their line will make a very specific reaction, won't it? So you've got to decide what you think as they're talking. That way it's really moment to moment to moment, right? Any other questions? How did you feel about this, Maria?
I think going through it really helped me see that there were holes in my thinking, because I thought that I had like a pretty steady stream, not stream of consciousness necessarily, but like a pretty steady stream of thoughts. And I think going through line by line really helped me see that I was missing some really important moments of thought, specifically like in like hearing about letting my thoughts lead into lines.
Okay, so you just got to make it work as a flowing thought process, right? That will lead you into what you need to say next. Caesar, what did you think of all this?
You got let your thoughts do a lot of the work, and when you're not speaking, because we be practicing. It's kind of.
So did what I was saying make sense to you?
No, yeah, that made like so much sense. Where you said that you have to have your thoughts transitions to your lines. That made like that clear everything.
So it's actually like talking back to them as they're speaking. That you're constantly thinking back.
Yeah.
While he's talking, you're answering him in your mind.
He told me like, instead, like throughout my day, like before I even respond to people, I should think what I'm gonna say before I respond to like people. That's what Trey told me to do.
The thing is, you actually do. There's no way that you would be able to speak to anyone unless you thought of what you were gonna say.
Yeah.
Don't you?
No.
You have to think of it, because whatever the other person's saying makes you think of something, and then you go, you know what? I got to say this to them, and then you say it. But it's in your head first, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always in your head first.
It's always in your head first. You got to think of it before you say it. Because what they say makes you think of it.
I just got to get used to that, thinking thoughts more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something very new, and not all acting classes talk about this, but for me, it's the secret. It's the secret for staying in character.
Before I even joined the Reddit thing, like I would do like self-tapes, and like you said, like when you're doing like self-tapes and that I did, and I was like, dang, like I'm not doing nothing. Like it's like you said, it goes dead, and I was like, yeah, I gotta do something.
Yeah, it's like somebody turns the robot off, and it's just there. And then they push the button, and you go, and that's why, and then it goes off. So you don't want that to happen. Anything to say, Mr. Spencer?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing you cover every week, and it's just putting it into practice, and it like just the importance of really knowing what the other person's saying, really knowing what you want, so that when they say something that's counter to what you want, you start to react to it and think, well, that's not what I want. Here's what I want. And, you're going back and forth. And
yeah, those triggers. It's got to trigger you to want to talk, right?
Yeah,
letting them trigger you.
And for the longest time, I was like, okay, I got to let him say his whole thought, then I'll decide what I'm thinking. But I think maybe last session with Trey, it was like, no, I can start reacting immediately. Like I can get the tone of what he's saying and start thinking, well, you're going the wrong way. Let me react against you and try to convince you otherwise.
Yeah, your reaction is really word for word as he speaks, isn't it? As soon as he goes, no, and you go, what do you mean no? Right away, after the first word, you are talking back to him.
Yeah.
Right? And it happens as you hear each word, you are speaking back to him, which leads into your line.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And like trusting that the thought is going to do enough work instead of thinking, well, that makes me angry. All right, now I'm angry. Instead of trying to add to the thought, I can just think the thought and it'll show up.
Yes, because just thinking the word anger starts to make you feel angry, right? Anger.
Yeah.
But what works much more than that is, you make me so fucking mad. Okay? That's the thought of your character, not just anger. I'm feeling anger. That doesn't trigger you. But thinking you make me sick,
yeah,
that triggers anger. The thought triggers the emotion. And I don't know, I've been listening to these other acting coaches because I'm putting all my stuff up on YouTube and all of their lessons start popping up on me. And they're all talking about getting into their emotions, like, then you got to feel, acting is 80% emotion. And, you got to feel sadness. You got to feel that. You know what? Your character is not thinking about his emotions ever. He's just feeling them. And where do they come from? From reaction and from thought. Right? Are you ever thinking, I'm going to show this person how mad I am right now? No, you're just thinking mad thoughts. You're thinking, I want to kill you right now. Okay? So the thought itself gets you, doesn't it? It gets you there. You don't have to sit there and think of when the last time you were angry. Oh, I was really mad at my sister last week. Let me try to remember that. Oh, so many acting classes, that's what they do. That's method, sense memory, remembering those moments. Okay. Do you need to do that? That takes you out of your situation, doesn't it?
Winnie, let me ask you this. In preparing to think like your character, should you do that? Like, okay.
Of course.
Yeah. But not while you're performing.
No, when you're preparing your material, you want to find all the similarities that there are between you and your character. And you try to think, have I ever been in this situation? How did I feel in that situation? Oh, I can see how he felt there. He probably felt the same way that I did with my sister, right? So you do understand that. You have to be able to relate to your character the best that you possibly can. Know your character inside and out. But then when you're in the moment, you don't need to be thinking about all that stuff, do you? Do you? Because the thoughts themselves will do it, because you already know once you've related to him, once you find the similarities, once you have the same dysfunction and craziness and experience that they've had, and you can relate to it. Oh yeah, I got a little bit of that nutsiness in me too, right? Then you can be it, and you can just put yourself in his or her shoes and think their thoughts, and their thoughts will bring the emotions up. But you can't even know that you'd want to say, I want to fucking kill you, unless you've had something like that made you mad, right? It's your past experiences that ignite those thoughts, right? but you don't have to think of them. You just already know that that's the way it feels. And that's what you think when you're angry, right? Does that all make sense, everybody?